Whit Merrifield, how quickly did that come about? Is this somebody you had your eye on for a long time? Or did it sort of move quickly?
Well, he is somebody we've had our eye on for, I guess, an extended period. One of the names we had identified that might fit for us this year, because he can play multiple positions. We like him as a player. We think he's a championship-type caliber player. But we were concerned at first that would he accept the type of role we'd have on the club? That was the first thing. The second thing, really earlier in the winter time, they were looking for a multi-year deal at that time. We weren't prepared to give that type of contract. And then I would say over the last about week is when it really picked up. We went back and forth quite a few times between his agent and myself, and then we were able to finally come to the meeting. But he was always a name that appealed to us, but just didn't know if the circumstances were going to work.
Matt, over here on the left.
You have talked at length this offseason about players not necessarily wanting the role that you were offering. So what do you envision his role being on this specific roster?
Well, it was important before we signed him that I thought, and right when we started the conversations, I wanted to make sure that he and Rob Thompson spoke. So they spoke on the phone, first of all, to make sure that he would describe the role, which would be not an everyday role with the ball club anticipated at this time. Like your abilities a great deal, sure you'll get in there, but it will be 2-3 days a week, 3-4 days a week, don't really know that, but we want to make sure that you understand what the role would be. And Whit told Rob Thompson that he would be happy to accept the role. He understood what the playing time was, but, which was great. Rob Thompson told me afterwards, Topper said, I loved his response. He says, but I'm going to play well enough to show you that I'll get more at-bats. But he's willing to do, he understands what the role, and I thought it was really important where we are as an organization and where he is as a player, because he's played all the time. And he played that way with Toronto last year. Second half, the last couple of months at least, he didn't put up quite the same numbers. But a part of that might have been that he played a lot as he's gotten up there in age, but he's still in great shape, still runs well. So that will be our role. I mean, he'll play all over the place, I envision. He's actually, and again, I don't know how all this is going to fit at this point, but in one scenario, if you said Rojas does make the club, and Marsh plays left, and Stott plays second, and both of them we think will continue to grow. Stott hit left-hand pitching very well. Marsh continues to grow, versus a real tough left-hander. Well, Merrifield's two best positions are second base and left field, so he could spell either one of those two. But he could also go to third, he could also go to short, he can play first. He can play really any other position other than catcher and pitcher.
Was part of your evaluation that maybe he could be a little more productive in a role that doesn't expose him as much as not an everyday player, maybe at this stage, like maybe get a little more production as a part-timer?
Perhaps, you never know, but one of the things that, and we did talk to some people with Toronto, and they liked him a great deal. They thought very highly of him. That perhaps they played him too much as the year went on due to circumstances, but only time will tell on that. But yes, I think so. Sometimes it's hard for players that play well and play good and play hard to ever take a step back, but sometimes it does help them.
Let's go to Chris on the right.
Well, now that he is here, regardless of where you guys fit him in, like clearly this team has World Series aspirations. How does he fit into that? Of just being that veteran guy who can do so many different things. This has to help this organization tremendously.
Well, that's what, when you have a good club and you're trying to win, and you're looking for somebody trying to get better any little way that you can. He can help you in a lot of different ways. And so, to us, it's a big addition in that regard. To me, the ideal role, and sometimes you can't always do this, players don't want to do it. Sometimes where your budget is at a particular time, it doesn't work. But you like to have a veteran player or two on your bench, right? Really, rather than just a young guy sitting there all the time. And we keep talking about bench conversations and have gone on forever. But the reality is in the National League or American League at this point, you have 9 everyday players, right? 9 starting players. One guy, then your bench player is a backup catcher. So that's 10. You have to have a utility infielder who can play shortstop under any scenario. So now that's 11. So you only have 2 more positions. So how you fit them all together can really be important. Somebody that can play a lot of different positions also can come off the bench and get a big hit for you because they can hit, can run. A very valuable player for you with a club like ours.
Jason?
Whit had really alluded to the fact that he's accomplished a lot as an individual player, all the individual accomplishments. He wanted to come here because he wanted to win, and that's where he was in his career. Have you found that what you've built and what this organization has built over the years is that players, this has become a destination organization, a place where players want to come? We spoke with Spencer as well. They're very excited to be here. Obviously, being in October the last few years, and the home crowd and the whole thing. Can you just talk about what this organization has built and being a destination organization for a lot of free agents and players looking for homes?
Well, I think it's an organization right now that players would like to play here in a lot of circumstances. Not always, because sometimes you'll run into someone who has a particular reason for joining another organization, close to home, opportunity, whatever it may be. But I think really what's happened here is we have a good organization. We have a really good club. I mean, when we're here starting the season, our goal is to win a world championship. That is our goal. I don't know if we'll do it or not, but we have a chance to do it. We have one of those clubs that people can talk about, and if things go well, you have a chance to do that. We have the opportunity to do that with a good organization that I think is well respected in the industry, with the players that are on the club. Our guys play hard. There's a good chemistry with the club. There's good leadership. There's young players that have broken in that are really good players. We have a manager and coaching staff that intertwines with the players well. We have ownership that treats our players tremendously well and believes in treating them that way and their families. We have an environment that's second to none when you come to Philadelphia at the ballpark. I mean, last year I was sitting there during the playoffs and been fortunate enough to be in a few times, but I said, if you don't like this, this is what it's all about. Now, of course, I would have liked it won, right? But the whole thing, but it's fun. I mean, you're drawing a lot of people. Fans are excited. I mean, I go out and around town here, I'm going by and play, people are talking about, geez, look at, great, this is great, this is fun. And so it's a great environment, and there's a lot of reasons that happens. And right now, I do think if a lot of things being equal, when I talk to Whit, and it's a coincidence, I've met Whit's dad. He's involved. My son went to Wake Forest. His dad is involved at Wake Forest, so I met his dad, who's a wonderful person. I've met his brother. I mean, he's a nice young man. And when I talked to him, he said, well, I identified the Phillies early in the offseason. That was a place I'd like to go. That would be a great fit for me to go. And I think that happens right now, so it's great. We want to take advantage of it, but I don't blame a player like that, because if you're a good player, and he is, he'll get playing time. I don't know exactly how much time, but it's like when I talk to people and say, well, we have good starting pitchers, and we do. But the chances of us starting those same 5 for 162 games are not real good. Somebody's going to need to get some other work, and it's the same thing with your positional players. You're going to end up, at some point, somebody's going to go on the injured list, and you're going to need, or somebody's going to need a few days off, and that's where your depth comes into play. So sure, it's a great environment, Ryan. It's fun to come to the ballpark. I mean, geez, you could look at that. You got the fanatic running around all over the place. I mean, it's a great atmosphere, right? So why wouldn't you want to come to that? It's great.
Scott, right in the middle.
You've signed Whit, made a handful of moves for pitching depth. There's a lot of unsigned players still out there. Would you kind of characterize yourself now as sort of like whatever comes to us, or are you still actively, kind of pinpointed certain areas that you're going to try to attack for opening day?
Well, you always can get better, right? And I go through this all the time and I understand it, because let's just identify your weakness, whatever your weakness is. Okay, let's say someday, what's a good position for me? Say first base with the Phillies, right? You know that's not a weakness, but let's just say it was our biggest weakness. Well, then you go get a first baseman. Well, then something else becomes your biggest weakness. So then you have to address that situation. That's just how it goes, because there's no perfect club. But I would identify our situation more that we like our club. I think our positional players are really set. I don't know if we're healthy when we break camp and Rojas makes the club, 12 of our 13 spots are spoken for at this point. So there's a battle for one more. We have a lot of different people that can play that role. Our 5 starting pitchers are set. We have helped the depth of our starting pitching with a lot of moves that we're making. And our bullpen, we like our bullpen too at this time, and we see some of the arms that we like. So again, we'll be open-minded and we'll see what happens, but I can't say that we're actively looking to say we want to add this particular thing. And it's interesting, I just was talking to Sam Full, and we designated for Caleb Ward, right? We like Caleb Ward when we got him. We think he can pitch in the big leagues. Well, I've already got a phone call about somebody wanting to acquire him today, right? And so what's happened is the back end of our roster is stronger too. So if I think sometimes maybe circumstances will change something, a particular day, which happens at this time of the year, but the reality is the back end of our roster is better too, so we're not going to get those people through waivers anymore. It's just not going to happen. We were lucky we got Bilotti and we got Muzziotti through, but I think we're in a decent spot, and again, we'll always get better, but I think we have helped ourselves, and there's some arms that we like out there that we could say, hey, starting pitching wise, if something happens and we need a few starts, hey, this guy looks pretty good. Same thing with the bullpen.
Chris, on the right.
Zack Wheeler's been very open about wanting to stay here long-term. He said that his 8 representatives are speaking with the team. Could you offer any kind of an update on where that is, and is that something you would like to get done before the regular season?
Well, I'll answer in a few ways. I mean, Zack would not mislead you. Of course, we've talked. So we're in a position, and it is a priority. We would love to get that deal done. It's usually easier said than done. Deals are just difficult to get done, but it's easier said than done. But other than that, I prefer to keep contract negotiations private, because I think that's the best way you do those things. I don't think you talk about him publicly, but he's a guy we would love to have in our organization for a long time.